Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for Increasing Mental Toughness. My name is Chris Walchuk. I'm really happy to be here with you today. I think that we have had a very interesting and challenging year so far, and we continue to do so. And so increasing our mental toughness probably is a really, really good skill for all of us to be considering and figuring out how we can do that. Before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. The way that we are going to be interacting with each other during our session today is via the chat box. I know some of you have found it. You responded to me when I was asking about the sound check. But if your chat box is not open, if you hover over the little tab at the top of your screen, you're going to see a drop-down menu come down. One of the options is chat. If you click on that, your chat box will open up, and then you can communicate with me throughout the session. So if everyone wants to do that right now, make sure your chat box is open. Give me a hi, hello, found it, whatever you want in the chat box, just so I know that you are with me, that you can hear me, and you can respond to me. Excellent. I'm seeing lots of hellos coming in. Thank you for that. We are also recording this session, so we will have that recording available to you in the next few days. So if you want to go back and listen to something, share it with somebody, you are most welcome to do that. Another thing I just wanted to point out, you'll notice that, again, you are muted upon entry. We are using the chat box for those of you who just joined us, and all of your comments are sent privately to me, so you're not seeing everybody's comments. I can assure you we have a nice group of people on this session with us, nearly 20, so I'm hoping that we'll have some really good conversation about what it means to increase our mental toughness. All right. So here is a definition of mental toughness, and I want you, as we're looking at it, to think about how you view mental toughness. So it's a quality of mind or intellect characterized by, among other things, a refusal to be intimidated, a determination to finish a contest even when things are going badly, and an ability to control emotions and remain highly focused when under the pressures of intense competition, comparing physical toughness. What do you think about that? Is that how you would describe mental toughness? And if so, you consider yourself mentally tough by this definition? Just give me some yeses or nos or maybes, however you would respond to that question. Interestingly, I'm seeing a few people say sometimes. Why sometimes? What's going on? Why is it that we're not doing it consistently, not doing it every single time we have any sort of concern or any kind of challenge that we're faced with? Somebody else said, I'm only halfway to being mentally tough. Okay, so, you know, it is a process. It really is something that we need to work on a regular basis. This is not one of these things that somebody is just born with. It's not one of these things that I could do for a little while and then quit. It really is a process that needs to happen for the long haul. Somebody else said, I think mental flexibility should be included in the definition. I agree with you. I think that's a really good point, because flexibility in every aspect, I think, is really important. Very often there is no black and white, clear cut. We need to be flexible in terms of how we define things, how we view things. Absolutely. Somebody else said, always learning. Somebody else said I can be intimidated. Yeah, well, sure, we all can be intimidated. There's no question about it. Things happen, and you know what? Very often when we're faced with any kind of challenge, any kind of situation, our first response to it is an emotional response, right? You guys have probably all heard of the term emotional intelligence, and that whole field of study is really about being intelligent about our emotions. Recognizing that our emotions are there, that's usually the first thing that happens to us when we're faced with something. And, recognizing it, understanding those emotions, understanding how they affect us, being able to control them, but more importantly then, to be able to get that rational part of our brain kicked in as well, so that we can use the combination of those two in terms of building that mental toughness. Somebody else said, sometimes because you let emotions take over, so exactly what we were just talking about, we don't let ourselves, get thoughtful and rational about something. We overthink it. We let those emotions get away from us. Somebody else said, I don't like the phrase control emotions. I prefer being aware of them. Okay, that's fair enough. The reason why in emotional intelligence we do talk about controlling emotions is, I need to be aware of them. That's step one, without a doubt. I need to understand what I'm feeling at any given moment. But the reason why it's important to know what I'm feeling is because my emotions will lead me to some sort of actions or reactions. And so the awareness is absolutely true that, when somebody cuts me off on the highway, my first instinct is to curse, yell, scream, maybe use some choice hand gestures, right? That's my emotion speaking. But that's not necessarily the best way of handling that situation. So once the awareness is there, now I need to learn to sometimes control that emotion. So maybe I figure out better ways to release some of that energy rather than cursing, yelling, or giving some choice hand gestures. So that's what we mean about controlling. But I kind of see what you mean there, but it is a progression. Somebody else said emotional determination in the midst of emotional adversity. Oh, that's a good one. Absolutely, right? So I become determined even though I'm facing with adversity. I simply remove the words emotional there. But that really is what it's all about. And so let me just move on here. There we go. So lots of studies have been done on mental toughness, specifically in athletics, in sports. So Graham Jones and Peter Clough had done some studies on athletes because, when we think about it, an athlete really does need to have that mental toughness. They need to have the physical toughness, clearly, especially in certain sports, to be able, to manage that situation. But they also need to have that mental toughness to not let it get to them, right? If they're not doing well, if they're losing, not to just say, oh, well, and let it go, but to continue to have that mental toughness to say, no, we still got this. We're going to keep going. I remember many, many years ago, probably about 25, maybe even longer years ago, I had presented a paper at a conference on that very topic, and one of the sources that I used, there are a couple of books that were written, The Inner Game of Golf and The Inner Game of Tennis. And in both of those books, they talk about, how there really is that emotional game that happens during during sports, right? Where if I'm a golfer or I'm a tennis player, or really, I think it can go for any sport. It really, you sit there and you say, well, I had a bad swing, I had a bad hit, and all of a sudden that mental piece takes over and starts questioning us and starts doubting us. And if we let that happen, it starts affecting the physical game. And so that's why with athletes specifically, that mental toughness is hand in hand with the physical toughness. Angela Duckworth, who is a psychologist out of the University of Pennsylvania, wrote a book several years back actually, called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And she has really spent most of her career researching and developing tests to measure what she calls grit. Great book, by the way, if you are interested in this topic. And she defines grit as a combination of perseverance and passion for long-term goals. Perseverance and passion. And I'll reference her as we go through the session a few times because her work is definitely incredibly valuable. She's got a really good TED Talk, if anybody is interested, where she talks about grit. And really, very often it's not just those people who are extremely talented at something, it's that stick-to-itiveness. It's those people who work through any of those difficulties to get themselves to that next place and achieve the goals that they set out to achieve. So when we talk about mental toughness in today's world, there's a picture here where there's a few things that are important. It's wanting and needing to be happy. It's wanting and needing to remain positive no matter what. It's wanting and needing to be successful in our whole lives, which means not just I'm super successful at work, but I am not at all successful in my personal life, in my relationships, or vice versa. So those people who are mentally tough look to be successful in every area of their life. And what they do is they utilize those skills that allow them to be successful, and they apply them to all these different areas. And it's also wanting and needing to get through challenging times, because let's face it, we are constantly faced with challenging times. And I think that 2020 has been a really good example for a lot of us to show our mental toughness or our lack of. How many of you would say that you definitely were challenged in 2020 with the pandemic, with the recent election, with the social justice issues, with all these things that are happening in our world today, that it definitely put you in a place that maybe was different than you had ever experienced before? Yeah, I'm getting a whole bunch of yeses, you bet. Yeah, it really was. Even though, maybe I wasn't specifically touched by it. So say, with the pandemic, I didn't lose anybody, a loved one. I didn't get the virus. None of my family members got the virus. Still, it's so big, and it touches every area of our lives that really it started taxing us. And so I've been doing lots of seminars since March on COVID-related topics, whether it's, how to build our mental toughness, how to work from home, how to deal with your kids being home, how to deal with the fear and anxiety. But pretty much everything has this little package of COVID-19 around it, as well as these other things. And it's interesting when I'd ask people how they were feeling at different times. So if I did it in March or April, then I did it during the summer, then I did it early fall, and now. And it's interesting to see that when this all began, people's reactions was, oh my gosh, this is, I can't believe this is happening. It was the shock. It was the, how are we going to get through this? What's going to happen? Then it was sort of, we got into a groove. We figured out how to make it happen. And most recently, when I ask people how you're feeling these days, a lot of people have said exhausted, tired, fatigued. Do you agree with that? How many of you are feeling that way? Just at this point in time, it's been going on for so long that, I'm just done with this. Yep, everybody. Yeah, worn out. Yep. Okay. So, yeah, hard to concentrate. Yeah. Well, think of it this way. This is such a good illustration. Put your hand out like this. Put right in front of you. Put your hand out. If I said to you, I want you to hold your hand like this for a few seconds. Say, okay, no big deal. And then let's say I came over and I put a giant dictionary or encyclopedia into that hand and said, keep that hand up. You can't put it down. Just hold it for a few seconds, a minute maybe. Sitting there and you're holding it, and you're holding it, and you're holding it. Okay. And then I say, you know what? I just need to go do something. I'll be back in 10 minutes. But don't let the book drop. Hold the book like that. Hold your hand like that. No support. Just keep your hand like this and hold that book up. I come back and 10 minutes later, you're still there, and I do it again for another 10 or 15 minutes. It's getting harder and harder the longer you're doing it, isn't it? Now, the book is not changing. The book weighs exactly the same from the minute I put it in your hand to 20 minutes later. Yet it's become harder for me to hold up that book as time went on. And so that's what happens to us, I think, sometimes when it comes to our mental toughness. It's hard. There is no question about it. It might be easy in the beginning. How many of you have ever set a goal for yourself? Maybe even a New Year's resolution. And so, first you're gung-ho about it, right? I'm going to lose weight this year, or I'm going to start going to the gym. And the first week, first month, first 2 months, you're doing it. You're doing it every day, all the time. It gets a little tiring. You get busy. You get bored. And we don't stick with it. Well, mental toughness means that we stick with it. So I want you to think about somebody who you consider mentally tough. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've gone through some things and you've been mentally tough throughout. Maybe it's somebody you don't even know personally, an athlete or somebody else that you've read about that you've said, wow, they are really amazing how mentally tough they are. Describe them to me. What makes them mentally tough? Okay, somebody said never give up, embrace the suck. Yep. David Goggins. Yep. Barack Obama, grace under pressure. Resilient. My sister never stops encouraging. If she has a goal, she makes it happen. Excellent. I was going to say these are role models for us, truly. Somebody else said leveled. Yeah. All of these things that you're describing, that's what it looks like. And so the beauty is if you have that kind of a role model, right? Somebody that you really feel is mentally tough. Look to them. Talk to them if you can, if it's somebody that you know personally. Read about them if it's somebody you don't know personally. Find out how they do it. There's a lot of attitude involved there. There's a lot of, different things that this person is doing that makes it appear the way it does for you. Somebody else just added, my friend is kind and wise and a great listener. She helps me out. Excellent. We all need that, right? We all need those kinds of role models and those kinds of people who can encourage us. Because sometimes, we don't hold ourselves accountable. We don't believe in ourselves quite as much, and we don't make it happen where other people can be there to support us and help us through that. All right. Let me start sharing with you some of the ingredients of being mentally tough. So first and foremost, these people don't miss routines. Whatever it is that they do to build that toughness for themselves, they will do no matter what. How many of you are runners, real runners? Have run 5Ks, you've run half marathons, maybe even a marathon. Do we have anybody like that? Excellent. Okay, somebody said run marathon and ultras. Okay, good. Do you run all the time? Do you run pretty much every day? That person and anybody else who would put themselves in that category. Are you somebody who does it on a regular basis? Okay, so that person said 3 to 4 days a week. Okay, somebody else said I used to run marathons and half marathons. Somebody else said, depends on what I'm training for, but I'm training for something a majority of the week. Somebody else said 3 days of weightlifting. Okay, so they're doing it consistently, right? They're doing whatever it is that's going to make them, successful in that particular area. Somebody else said, I used to be a runner since 1981. Yes, I did a marathon. I didn't run every day. Now I walk every day. Don't run anymore. Okay, so again, consistency. They don't miss routines. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and the woman who was being interviewed, who was speaking, was a wellness. She's a nurse and also kind of a wellness specialist and consultant and things like that. She also happens to be a black belt in a couple of martial arts. And she said, you know what they say amongst us martial artists. She said, the only difference between a white belt and a black belt is the black belt shows up every day. That was so simple, and yet to me that was so profound. That is the difference between a white belt and a black belt. They show up every day. There are lots of people who start martial arts, right? And they get to the white and they get to the yellow and maybe they get to the red and then they either lose interest or they stop or whatever happens. But those people who consistently do it are going for that goal. They're looking to become a black belt and they're going to do whatever it is that they need to do. They don't make excuses. And so that's definitely one of those things that says mental toughness, because there's so many mind games that we play with ourselves, right? At the end of the day, if I'm that runner, and at the end of the day, if I say, the weather's kind of crummy and it's rainy, I'm tired, I had a really long day, I'm not going to go today, I'm going to go tomorrow, right? The real person that runs who has that serious goal, they don't do that. They're out there in all kinds of weather. They're out there doing it no matter what. Somebody said, I feel like it's a battle of the mind. It really is. It really is. And so, one of the things that people who are mentally tough do is they have a very clear goal in mind. They decide what it is that they're trying to accomplish, whether it's some sort of a physical goal like running a marathon, or I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get my PhD, or I'm going to whatever it is, but they have very, very clear goals in mind. Stephen Covey, who you might be familiar with, he's the gentleman who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the 7 habits is start with the end in mind. And so he encouraged, if you're goal setting, you got to start with the end in mind. What am I trying to accomplish? That's my end goal. And now I back into it, and I do everything that I need to do in order to reach that goal. But if that end goal isn't clear, not going to reach it, right? Because I'm going to keep going and going, but I don't know what direction I'm necessarily going in. Somebody else said smiling also forces you to start enjoying it. There's actually some research that does support that like when you smile, when you use positive affirmations, when you tell yourself, I can do this, I got this, it's going to be okay, that we do. There's another, I love quotes. You'll hear several quotes during our session today. Henry Ford, that if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. What do you think about that? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. How many times have you said to yourself, I think I can do that. I think I can learn that. I think I can accomplish that. Now, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen, but the chances are probably pretty good because you set your mind to it. You put forth actions that are going to get you there, as opposed to when you say to yourself, I can't do that. There's no way I'm going to accomplish that. No. And then we abandon. We throw our hands up in the air. We say we can't do it, and we don't do it. And so there is something about mind over matter. And again, having the clear goal, convincing ourselves that we are capable of accomplishing something, and then again, having all of these other support things in the background that we have been talking about and will continue to talk about. Somebody else said that they use that quote all the time. They agree. And someone said, sometimes it takes multiple times of convincing myself that I should try. Absolutely. Well, we're always playing mind games with ourselves. We talk ourselves into things. We talk ourselves out of things. And, self-talk is something that most of us are doing on a pretty regular basis. And so if we start paying attention to it, what we'll probably find is, do I tend to talk myself out of things more often or into things more often? And if it's out of things, if it's more that negative, the I can't do that, then we need to really kind of reframe that a little bit, do a little reality check and change that voice, that things that I'm saying to myself into something that's a little bit more positive. We also need to prioritize correctly, when you work alone, you have to constantly prioritize. You have all of these things to do. What's most important? What do I tackle first? So I have to determine based on, on urgency and importance. Once again, Stephen Covey has this great time management matrix. It talks about figuring out your priorities based on urgency, which is simply time, right? There's a deadline. Something has to be done by a certain time. And importance. Something is truly important. Is there value to what you're doing? And that makes a really big difference in terms of figuring out what those priorities are. Somebody else said, I feel like it's a battle of the mind. Oh, we read that one, sorry. The trick is to say you love hills, cold water. You change your attitude. Okay, so again, it's that self-talk, right? I love hills. I love when it's cold, even when you know that's not true, but you keep convincing yourself of that, and then you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. Don't rely on inspiration. Inspiration is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but there's got to be the work behind it. And a lot of the work that Angela Duckworth did in her research and that she talks about in her TED Talk and in her book, Grit, has a lot to do with the what I do with it, right? There are lots of people who, are inspired by things. There are a lot of people who are naturally talented in certain things, but it appears that those people who are most successful are the ones that put their, nose to the grindstone and are really, really putting in the work. So we want to have inspiration, right? When we look at somebody who's successful, I told you to look at role models, right? And when we look at somebody like that, that is inspiring. That gets me, going, and I want to be like them. But that's only going to take me to a certain point. When the work gets hard, I need to be able to put in the time and want to put in the time. We need to focus on consistency, because what we're doing is we're trying to create a habit here. So that goes kind of in with that very first point that we talked about, never missing a routine. So, think about if I wanted to change a habit, I wanted to start doing something differently. I want to, get in much better shape, so I'm going to start exercising. Well, I need to exercise on a regular basis, right? I need to do it 3, 4, 5 times a week, maybe even more. I need to mix it up. I need to have a routine of what I do. If I say I really want to get in better shape, and for a few weeks I'm really good, I go to the gym every day, and then I stop for a week. And then I go back for a few days, and then I stop for a few days. And then I go back for a week, and then I stop for a week. I'm not going to get the result because the consistency is missing. And so that's where, again, so important that we establish those routines, create those good habits, and be consistent with them on a regular basis. It's also helpful to be self-reflective. A little bit of introspection really goes a long way. Checking in with ourselves. How am I feeling about something that's going on? Is this really important to me? Sometimes we set these goals and then deep down we're not committed to them. And we start seeing that when we obviously don't feel like doing the things that are required. And so we need to just, check in with ourselves on a regular basis and reflect. Is this going the way I want it to go? Is this so important to me? And do that on a regular basis. The cool thing about mental toughness is it can be learned at any age. This is not just for young people who are just starting out and learning these new habits. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And that's exciting to me, especially as I get older, because I would like to think that as I get older, I can still learn to do new things. I think for a lot of people, the last 9 months, we've noticed that with technology. Most of us have become a lot more tech savvy in the last 9 months than we had been all the years prior to that, because necessity is the mother of invention. Right? When there's a necessity, I figure out how to learn something, and I do it. And that's the beauty, is that so many people are taking on things. After I turned 50, I just love reading stories about people who are, 50 and above, who set their mind to something and start doing it. People who are never runners start running, training and then running marathons or whatever. There was a yoga instructor that I thought was very inspirational. I had read about her a long time ago. She actually just recently passed away. She was something like 103 when she passed away, and she started doing yoga in her 90s and, became this amazing yoga instructor. I mean, those are the kinds of stories that really show you that, any of us can really, really accomplish anything if we really put our minds to it. And so all of these things that we're talking about can really help to build that mental toughness. And of course, stop and reflect on your feelings and move on. So again, sometimes you're going to have those negative feelings, those doubtful feelings, and we're going to talk more about overcoming doubt in just a moment. But really the bottom line is to keep moving forward, pushing forward, and figuring out, what do I do next? What do I do next? All right. So a step-by-step guide, here are some things to consider. You need to search your motivation. What is your motivation for doing something? Where does it come from? Why do you want it? Why do you want to accomplish this thing? Think about anything that you took on at any point. Do you think the why is important in the process? And as important as the what you're doing? Sort of our guide in the back of our minds of, why am I doing this? Why do I care so much about this? You see people who sometimes get very ill, physical illnesses, and then all of a sudden after they go through that illness, they vow they are going to take great, care of themselves physically, exercise, eat right, and all of those things. The why? Because they almost died, because they got very, very sick, and they don't want to go there again. And so lots of times when we set goals for ourselves, it really helps to really focus on the why. Why do I want it so badly? I remember many, many years ago, I was a smoker. So I started smoking when I was in college, and I smoked right through my 20s into my early 30s. This was the 1980s. Everybody smoked. It was, a very social thing to do, so not like today. But I got to the point where I really did want to stop smoking, and I tried on numerous occasions and could not. I would stop for a few days, and then I'd go back, stop, and keep going. And I knew all the logical stuff about it. I knew, you're going to get lung cancer, and, if you want to extend your life, you have to stop smoking. It's so bad for you. I knew, the kind of gross things about it, it gets in your fingernails and all of that stuff. I knew all of that stuff intellectually, yet that didn't do it for me. What did it for me was I was already in my early 30s, and I decided I wanted to start a family. And I knew that I could not get pregnant and still smoke. And I couldn't imagine getting pregnant and having to quit cold turkey. So that became my motivation, the why of why I'm going to stop smoking. And I spent a few months doing a number of things that got me to that point of stopping smoking. All my other whys just didn't matter quite as much until I found that last why that really, really mattered to me. So again, people who are mentally tough recognize that, look, sometimes it is going to be hard. It's going to be easier to just throw my hands up in the air and not do it. But if I want it bad enough, figure out, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why is it so important to me? Where did that goal come from? And then start small and have the consistency. Just like that martial artist said, the difference between the white belt and the black belt, it's practicing every day. So whatever it is that I'm trying to do, run a marathon, become an expert in a particular field of study, whatever it is, I need to start small, but I need to do it consistently. All right, so based on everything I've said so far, how many of you would say now, find I have done these things. I have been mentally tough in something. Again, maybe it was breaking a bad habit. Maybe it was starting a good habit. And if so, if you're willing to share it with us, what was it? Give me examples of specifically what it was that you did that made you realize that, I have this. I am pretty mentally tough when I have to be. Good. Somebody said finishing my master's degree. Absolutely. I actually started my career in academia as well. I worked in a university for the first 5 years of my career, and I worked full-time, and I went to school at night for my master's. And it was hard lots of times working full-time and doing that at night. But I knew what the end result was going to be, right? I wanted that so badly that I, did what I needed to do to get there. Somebody else said needing others' approval, making my approval the most important, self-respect. Oh, okay, so that's where they learned it. Excellent. Somebody else said quitting a job that made me miserable. Oh, now that does require being tough-minded because, look, it's so easy. There's a lot at stake in quitting a job, right? Even though you're miserable, it's financial, it's social, it's, my livelihood. It affects so many different areas that, it's easier to just sometimes deal with whatever's going on than to be tough-minded and say, no, I am going to quit. I'm going to figure out what my next step is. Somebody else said got my doctorate. Somebody else said actually did my black belt in Taekwondo. Excellent. Do you agree with that statement that person made about the white belt versus the black belt? I'm just curious. Another opinion of somebody who has done that. Do you feel that consistency and being there every day really is what made a difference? And then somebody else said, yes, I have education, running, now walking, general, contracted, and added to my house. Excellent. Excellent. And yes, the person who's the black belt said, yes, I showed up every day. Excellent. So we know that this works. This is not magic. This is reality. But it's hard. There's no question. And very often we doubt ourselves. we question, can I really do this? Can I really reach that goal? And so, we need to start changing that our vocabulary, what we say to ourselves, that self-talk. And when you hear yourself saying, I can't do that, right? Back to what Henry Ford said, we need to cross out that T of can't, which means I can do that. I can do that. And so that means I have to sometimes silence that inner and some of those outer voices, right? Sometimes we do it to ourselves. We question ourselves. I don't think I can accomplish this. I don't know if I'm good enough. But then sometimes it's also coming from other people. If other people are saying, why are you doing this? It's so hard. Or I don't know that you'll be able to accomplish that. We start believing it. And so we need to overcome that. Silence those voices you're hearing from the outside as well as your own, and really focus more on creating that sense of confidence, that self-confidence. And one of the ways that we can do that is go back to previous successes. Think about other things that you've set your mind to in the past and accomplished, right? We forget about those. If it's past, we remember in the moment and then it's past. But if I keep reminding myself, I didn't think that I was going to finish that master's degree, but I did. So now that I want to go for a doctorate, all right, how did I do it last time when I was going for my master's and I didn't think I was going to do it, right? That's how we start building that sense of self-confidence, basing it on past successes. Got to remind yourself. Somebody else said, I'd like to teach English as a second language overseas. This pandemic is a glitch in it at the moment. Okay, so, and this is a real glitch. I mean, this is, we also need to be real sometimes with that. If you want to be overseas, that's not a good thing to be doing right now, probably not even possible, depending upon where it is that you would like to be doing that. So that's where I think we have to be realistic also. Sometimes there truly are obstacles, barriers that we cannot overcome at this moment. You cannot change anything about this pandemic that's going on worldwide to be able to, poof, make it go away, and now I'm going to go reach that goal. But once it's over, visit that goal, right? If that's something you really, really want to do, well then, once everything is opened up, I can do that. And maybe in the meantime, I can be setting the scene, right? I can be doing everything that I need on this end. How do I become an English as a second language teacher? What credentials do I need? What do I need to be able to do that? So even though I physically can't do it right now, I'm preparing myself to do it. Somebody else added, I've had family and friends try and pay me to not run a marathon because they were convinced I would die. I ignored them and focused on my mentor's helpful support. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Thank you for sharing that. And look, I'm sure they didn't mean anything bad by it. They probably were just really worried. That's a big deal to run a marathon. And because they have their own fears about it, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. You can't do that. You're going to get sick. You're going to make yourself sick. You're going to die, right? And then they impose that on us, not to dissuade us, because I want you to fail necessarily, but it's because I fear for you. But unfortunately, sometimes those fears we take on and then we say, yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, I better not do that. That's probably not realistic. Somebody else said feelings are not always based on facts. Oh, very often they're not, right? I mean, look, feelings and intuition are a very good thing. In a lot of cases, they do keep us safe. If you're, I don't know, driving somewhere or walking somewhere and you just have this feeling something doesn't sit well with me, I don't feel safe right now, that's great. Because what that's going to do is that's going to make you do something, right? Jump into action to get yourself to a safe place. So we have to pay attention to it, but we also need to recognize that very often, it is just my feelings that are maybe getting away from me, that I'm exaggerating, that I'm overthinking. Let me back it up with fact, right? If there's fact to back it up, well then I need to do something about it. If there's no facts to back it up, well, then let me keep moving forward because maybe I can accomplish this goal. Somebody else said, don't listen to anyone else. Do what's best for you. Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. But again, unfortunately, too often we are affected by other people's opinions, feelings, thoughts, the things they say to us. And so that can definitely get in our way. And somebody else said, we fear that we don't understand and don't know. Yeah, so that's a really good point. So how do I change that? I educate myself. I learn. I read everything I can. I talk to people who are doing those kinds of things, whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish, right? I don't know what I don't know, but once I start educating myself, I will know what I'm up against. And then I can make a more rational decision as to, is this something I still want to pursue? Maybe not. Maybe I do decide, not that important to me. Let me move on to something else. The other thing that happens when we doubt is we waste time thinking about things that we have no control over. And, think about this pandemic. None of us have full control over this pandemic. Would you agree with that? None of us can snap our fingers and this pandemic is going to be over, right? But do you have any control over the pandemic in your life as it is around the pandemic? And if so, what control do you have? Okay, somebody said I can try to keep myself and my family safe. Somebody else said I can control where I go, where I expose myself to. Somebody else said the only control we have is over our emotions and attitudes. Okay, so let me talk to that one in just a minute. First, there are actions. So just like the first comment that somebody made, I can control where I go, what I expose myself to. So those are physical actions that I have control over. Somebody else said stay home. Somebody else said just what I can control, wear a mask, physically distance as much as possible. More people are saying wearing masks, social distancing, being careful. Yeah. And then there's the whole attitude thing, right? You choose your attitude. We have perceptions very often, and those perceptions can either drive us to do something and accomplish something, or they can frighten us away. They can change that. Let's imagine you and I were walking down the street, just, chit-chatting, having a nice walk, and down at the end of the street, we see a loose dog. Loose dog running around. There's no owner around. The dog's not on a leash. What's your first instinct? What are you thinking to yourself? Oh, I love it. Somebody else just added a great Eleanor Roosevelt quote. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And then this person says, no one can make you feel any feeling without your consent. I would agree with that. I think that's absolutely true. Okay, so here's the responses to the dog. Somebody said, does the dog need help? Somebody says, I cannot change what happens to me, but I can control how I respond to what happens. Absolutely. Our responses, our perceptions, we have full control over. So let's go back to the dog. What are you thinking? Okay, several people are saying keep away, look out, could be dangerous. Okay, somebody else said, oh, he must be lost. Okay, so my response is going to be very different if I say, oh my gosh, I hope that dog's okay. I love dogs. Let me go see if I can help that dog. Versus, oh my gosh, I'm in danger. This is a loose dog. What if he's vicious? And a lot of that can be based on previous experiences. If I've always had great experiences with dogs in my life, never anything bad, I love dogs, I've had dogs, I embrace dogs, or I got bit by a dog, I got attacked by a dog. And so that colors the way we look at things. And so again, sometimes that's where we have to separate the facts from the feelings. That perception, that feeling may stop me from doing something, right? I set my goal to do something, and then I think, oh, but remember I tried to do that once, that didn't work out. Yeah, I guess I probably can't. And we talk ourselves out of those things. Don't worry about that. Take control of what you can. Take baby steps moving forward, because that's really what you want to be doing, right? One foot in front of the other in the right direction. That's what gets us to achieving these goals. And that's what continues to build that mental toughness for us. Here's some other interesting characteristics or traits of people who are mentally tough. They're happy when others do well. They really, really do look outwardly and want other people to be successful. It's not like they're in it just for themselves, that competitive, I need to be the winner. They really genuinely look at, yeah, I want to be successful, but I want you to be successful too. And they are positive and happy when somebody else achieves some sort of success. They rarely, if ever, complain. How many of you can say that you are that person? You rarely, if ever, complain. Face it, we all complain sometimes, right? Somebody says, depends on the day. That would be me, not me. Nope, not me. Yeah, but look, again, that goes back to, if I keep complaining about things, that's taking time away from me fixing things. I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution, right? And so once again, those people who are tough-minded don't spend time saying, poor me, or that's wrong, or it shouldn't be that way. What am I going to do? How can I change that? How can I fix it? And so that mental attitude drives them to positive actions. Somebody else added, it depends on the circumstances. Most definitely, absolutely. Tough-minded people also practice gratitude. They recognize that, we have so much to be grateful for. Again, this helps them stay in that positive headspace as opposed to a negative one. Lots of times during the course of the day, we have things that go wrong, but we also have a whole lot of things that go right. Some people will spend most of their time only thinking about what went wrong. Sleep over what didn't go the way they wanted today. But by practicing gratitude, what we do is we shift that. We focus on the positive, and we look for the positive, deliberately look for the positive. You do that every day for 21 to 30 days, which is about how long it takes to change a habit. You are going to rewire that brain. You are going to start looking at things from a different perspective. How many of you do any kinds of gratitude exercises or keep a gratitude journal, have heard of gratitude practices, anything like that? Just give me a yes or a no in the chat. Okay, good. A few people are saying yes. Excellent. Okay, somebody said, I find 5 things in the morning. That's a great way to start your day, is think of 3 to 5 things that you are grateful for today. Right? Very specific. I do it at the end of the day. I do a gratitude exercise every night going to sleep, in bed, lights out, eyes closed, ready to go to sleep. And I actually just do a laundry list of everything that went right for me today. I got up. Everything worked. I was able to walk down the stairs very comfortably. I was able to put my coffee on. I could smell the coffee as it was making, and then I had myself a great cup of coffee. My dog came over and put her head in my lap, and I was petting her for a while. I woke my daughter for school, and she gave me a big hug before she left. I had a great meeting with my boss. I, had a wonderful webinar. On and on and on and on. That helps me to go to sleep because what I'm doing is I'm flooding myself with these positive things rather than those doubtful things, those negative things. Somebody else said counting blessings helps me sleep. Yeah, absolutely. These are little practices. They don't take a lot of time. It's something you can do in the privacy of your own head in many cases, but it really changes how we think. And when we think about mental toughness, it's all about how we think, how we view situations. Somebody else said, I recognize things throughout the day. That's a really good habit too. Just paying attention, being mindful, right? Noticing when something goes well or that something is good. I'm so busy. I've got, back-to-back webs today. And then I stop for a minute and I look out the window and the sky is absolutely gorgeous blue with some puffy clouds and the sun is beaming down. Just to stop and recognize that makes a really big difference. People who are mentally tough also tend to practice resiliency. They build their resiliency every single day. They, look at all of these things that we talked about, reframing situations, setting goals, looking back, keeping things in perspective, all of these things that really help me to focus my attention on what's going on. Somebody just added, it's part of my mindfulness / meditation practice. Meditation is another really good practice. A lot of people have started meditating now in the midst of this pandemic. Has anybody done that? Didn't meditate before, but has now done it. So somebody else said, throughout this pandemic, I had not realized, sorry, this thing keeps moving on me, a lot of time to stop and watch the leaves changing. And when I started going on walks, I started noticing it more because I'm working from home, so it was cool to focus on the little things. Yeah, right? That's a great mindfulness exercise, especially as we've gone through the different seasons, right? When this thing started in March, it was still winter in many places, right? And then we watched spring, and then summer, and now fall, and going into winter. Just those little observances that just keeps us a little bit sharper when it comes to what we're looking at. Somebody else said taking a moment to be silent helps to quiet the mind and the uncertainty of life. Most definitely. I told you, that's how I start my morning every day. I need a little bit of quiet. I wake up early purposely. I like being the first one up in my household. I want to enjoy that cup of coffee without thinking about emails or somebody telling me we need to do this today or whatever. And I just want to sit and I want to reflect. Lately, I've been watching the sunrise, things like that that really just, again, help us put things in perspective and keep our heads on a little bit straighter, especially in the midst of everything that we're dealing with. Somebody else said, I've been doing yoga, never did it prior to COVID. Excellent. I take walks for my silent time. Perfect. Yeah, and meditation, like I said, that's a really good practice. If you don't know how to do it, or if you've tried it and it didn't work for you, use an app. There's so many apps out there that are so good. Headspace and Calm are probably the two most popular ones. They're both really, really good. They provide you with guided meditations. There's some free stuff on the site, and then if you really like it, you can pay a certain amount of money and, have full access to everything. I found one prior to the COVID called 10% Happier that I really like. There's a podcast called 10% Happier. There's a book called 10% Happier, and then there's this app, this meditation app. There's tons of them. Somebody else said Insight Timer. Yes, that's another one I've heard about. I have not personally used that one, but I have heard that from many participants. Somebody else said childhood awareness, a childlike awareness, curiosity, ask fun questions. Yeah, again, as bad as this pandemic has been, and there's no doubt it has been, lousy for all of us in so many different ways, for some people worse than others. But we've got to admit that these little things have come out of this. It's slowed us down in some ways. It's helped us to focus a little bit more on the things that we care about most, what was important to us, those, things like watching the leaves change that we have neglected, haven't really paid attention. And so when we do those kinds of things, it really does center us a little bit more, helps us to be more thoughtful, and it also helps us to handle pressure better. Those people who meditate on a regular basis will tell you they swear by it. It has made such an enormous difference for them. Those people who exercise on a regular basis, every day or every other day, who run, will tell you, that is something that I need. I go into that zone, and that's when I'm just kind of doing my thing. There's an area of study in the field of positive psychology called flow. And flow is when you sort of lose track of time. You get so into whatever it is you're doing, a hobby, an activity, that you just lose track of everything. And so, we need to make time for those kinds of things. Anytime we do that, we are sharpening these skills that allow us to be a little bit more mentally hardy and mentally strong. A few other things, and I know we're running out of time here. We've got about 4 minutes left. So guided imagery is a really good thing, which is, kind of, again, visualizing and picturing someplace that's really calm and inviting and relaxing, just to, again, slow us down from everything that's going on. Positive affirmations, we talked a little bit about that earlier, where I really, really do, first start with the thought of I can do this. I've got this. I can accomplish this. And that makes a really, really big difference in our ability to manage. Every day, end your day thinking of 3 achievements. How many of you, especially during COVID, have ended a day and have said to yourself, I don't know what I did today. I don't know what I accomplished today. I feel like nothing. right? Yep, several people are saying yes to that. And no, you have. It looks different now. But again, to keep building that self-confidence, I need to find them. At the end of each day, do a little gratitude exercise, 3 things you're grateful for, and 3 things that you actually accomplished. Some days they're going to be not such big deals. You're going to even say, do I really even write this down or think about this? Other days they're going to be big accomplishments. You really did move forward. But it doesn't matter. When we talk about mental toughness, it's those slow movement in the right direction. That's what we're looking for. So by focusing on what's going well and slowly moving forward, it makes a difference. We talked already about concentrating on things that we can control and what we can't control, and just become very clear about that. If it's something that I say, I can't do anything about it, there's nothing I can do, you totally throw your hands up in the air. Say, let's see. Is there anything I can do about it, even within the realm of my own little circle, my own little bubble? And I asked you before, COVID, none of us can stop the thing altogether, but what can you do? And you all listed several things that you can do to keep yourself and your family safe. That's what we need to do with everything. This is where we can really use this intellect that we have, our mind, to really work through it. But very often, again, we allow our emotions to stop us, to question us, to doubt us. And again, setting those clear goals. And sometimes your goals might be big, right? Somebody who said they had gotten their doctorate. That is a long-term goal for a lot of people, especially if you're doing it kind of on a part-time basis. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you chunk it into smaller goals, okay, so by this and this date, I want to reach this goal. So in order to do that, I need to do this by then, this by then, this by then, this by then. If I'm not a runner and I decide I want to run the marathon next year, that's in New York. I'm from the Northeast. It's November. All right, if I wanted to do that, how can I back into it? Is it possible for me to start today to train for that marathon next November? So, these are the kinds of things that allow us to have that clear thinking. And so here's a quote from Grit, but the one I'm going to share with you, just very short, is something that Angela Duckworth has said. Our potential is one thing. What we do with it is quite another. And that's what a lot of her research has shown. There's a lot of people who have a lot of potential, but they don't use it. They don't go fully into it and reach those goals. And another quote of hers, as much as talent counts, effort counts twice. So it is that stick-to-itiveness. It's ensuring that I am doing what I need to do to reach those goals that I need. So it's getting out of our own way when we sometimes question ourselves. It's focusing on what we have and what we can do, and it's pushing ourselves to keep going forward. So with that said, I know we had a couple of questions. Let me just go back and answer those. Somebody said, I missed the early part of the presentation. Is it being recorded? Will it be posted? Yes. It is being recorded. We will send that to the person who organized this for you, and they will send it to you. I don't know, do we have Beth on with us? Beth, if you want to tell us, if you're on still, where it will be posted. We can also get you the PowerPoint. Somebody's asking about that. Somebody else said about 20 to 30 minutes of working out is when I get into flow. I encourage friends trying to work out is to get past that time, and then you'll feel the endorphin boost. That is absolutely true. It's like that with anything. Those first few minutes are so hard, to get through. It's when we get tired. It's when we're like, oh, do I really want to do this? And when we actually get past that, that's when we can really shine and really make it happen. And bear with me here. I did see a couple of other comments. Deep breaths and baby steps, somebody said. I found using desk calendars and highlighters for each goal and task helps me to be my own cheerleader and my own accountability partner. Excellent. I love that. And Beth said, yes, I will post. It'll be in Yammer, and I can send it out to the group as well. Okay, fabulous. Thank you, Beth. Okay, that's it. That's all the questions we have. That's all the comments. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad you did. I know I have overstayed my welcome. It's a moment after the top of the hour, but thanks for joining. Stay well, stay healthy. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.